I'm rolling.
And he is rolling. Okay. Well, Gerrad, welcome to Dallas, Texas.
Thanks very much.
I've been looking forward to speaking with you.
Aha.
And we even rolled out a soft day for you.
Yes, it's an atrociously soft day out there.
I never did know what the Irish call it when it's raining really hard.
Yeah, I think it's because we rarely get it quite like that. We rarely get sort of storm kind of rain. But do we have a name for it? No, we don't in particular. No, no. But the soft day is just because you get that every second day, you know, or even every day in some part of the day it's going to rain for half an hour or so anyway. So we just decided to put up with it and be nice about it.
I know Ireland quite well. And I have traveled, starting Dublin, all the way south and back up the west coast to Galway.
Right.
And I love it. And then I must tell you also, excuse me, I must tell you also that I am 50% French, 50% Irish.
Excellent.
Oh, my husband, dear departed husband, said they should have a law against the French and the Irish merging, much less having children.
It sounds like a fantastic merger. Well, I mean, in the film, you probably noticed that a French cinematographer, and certainly I found I greatly enjoyed working with him, and that was a particular arrangement between the French and the Irish, which I thought we did very well on. And we both had the same taste in cigars as well, so it all went extremely well.
Is your home Dublin?
It is and has been since I went to college, but I was actually born in Limerick in the southwest coast. But I came to Dublin, so in a way it was, you know, the way lots of Irish people emigrate, of course you do, and in a way I suppose I only emigrated as far as Dublin, and I liked it so much, and after I finished my degree there, and luckily I was always able to get work, and you know, I did fine that way. So I never ended up leaving the country after that, and I really love Dublin. I love living in it. And it's one of the reasons, you know, that I wanted to kind of celebrate it in the film as much as anything else.
Did you always set out to be a film director?
Well, no, because to have notions like that in Ireland is you're setting yourself a very, not so much a high standard, but just the country is so small, the chances of becoming a film director are very, very little. But fortunately, you know, before I was, you know, while I was still young, people like Jim Sheridan and Neil Jordan, you know, blazed a little trail, which has meant that lots of American companies like Miramax keep a keen eye on Ireland now and keep watching the talent that's coming through, and so people like me have benefited from that. But I did always want to work I mean, to put it simply, I like working with actors, so I would always have thought I'd work in the theatre, or I worked in television as well for a while. So it's been, you know, I've done radio too now that I think of it, but it's all been about working with actors, creating dramatic fiction of one kind or another, and in many ways, I don't make a huge distinction between them. What I rather like to think is, when I think of an idea for a story or for a drama, I then think, which medium is it most suitable for? Because sometimes you have an idea for a story, and really the best place to have it is on radio, because of the particular, you know, things that radio can bring to it. And then you think of a story, and it might be a film script. So I like to think that I will remain open to that. Not everything should be a film, and indeed very often you find sometimes you go to see films and you think, well, that should have gone straight to radio, you know.
Or the trash can.
Or the trash can.
I did not feel that way about your movie,
I'm very glad I'm glad you made that comment. She didn't feel that way about the film.
Not at all. About Adam is a thoroughly delightful film.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Just delightful. Is About Adam in any sense at all autobiographical?
No, and not at all. And if in any way personal experience comes into it, I would probably inclined to say that I've invested more of myself in the three sisters than I have in the character of Adam, because the great attraction for me to write this story was actually the opportunity to explore three female characters and to set about, you know, because for male writers it is difficult to get into the minds of people and of women, and to, you know, to just think it through and think, am I getting it right? And so I was very much looking forward to doing that. And in fact, the writing of Adam was very, very easy, because once I'd worked out who the sisters were and what their needs were and what they wanted out of life and what they were thinking about life, then Adam's response to that was a very straightforward one. It was always the right response at the right time. So I spent much more time thinking about the characters of the women than I did about thinking about the character of Adam.
Do you yourself have sisters?
No, again, it's interesting. It is exactly the opposite. I grew up in a family of 5 brothers and 1 sister. And so, but what happened to me, which I initially raised my interest, again, it was years ago when I was in college, just a small little incident where, someone I'd met who I'd gotten to know in college, I visited them at their home and realized that he was a lone boy amongst a family of girls. I think it was 4 girls was in that family. And I was just completely taken aback at the different atmosphere in the house compared to my own house, and how much the feminine influence had completely taken over the house. Even like I make fun of it in one of the scenes in Adam where they're getting dressed and they're throwing bits of their clothing all around. And it sort of was like that actually in the house. There was a bra hanging off the back of a chair, and there was a dress hanging over there, and it just would, it was completely a girl's house. So it kind of lodged in my memory just as a sort of interesting thing. And again, it's something, you see, at one level it's always important when you're making a film to write about what you know, but I think it's also very interesting to explore what you don't know so well, and to see can you capture it correctly, can you capture that atmosphere correctly. So I'd be very keen actually to talk to people who have grown up in families of girls to see have I got the atmosphere of the family right. And I decided to go all the way with the kind of sense of femininity in the house, because even there's no father visible. He's gone. He's kaput. He's not there no more. So you not only had the girls, you had the mother as well. So you just had this lone little brother left to fend for himself in the midst of all this.
Stuart Townsend I found to be a very charming actor.
Yes.
Is he Irish?
Oh yes, he's from Dublin. What's interesting is I think he's not only charming, he's very bright in the sense that he knew what was required from that character from straight away since he read the script. Usually, especially actually with young male actors, they love to be moody and brooding and interesting and they always want to know about their emotional journey, the curve of the character, where they have their climax and where they have their crisis and all that sort of stuff. And Stuart understood straight away that none of these things applied to Adam. He doesn't have that kind of tortured soul. He doesn't have that kind of, because in fact in many ways he's hardly a real person at all. He's in many ways just a projection of each of the sisters. The sisters project onto Adam whatever they want him to be, and Stuart understood that that's what he had to be. And so we almost always the directing would relate to something like when we're doing the scene, Stuart saying, whose version of this am I Laura's version of me, or am I Lucy's version of me? Oh yeah, I'm Lucy's version of me. Go, okay, we got you. And then he would go on and play that version. And I think it's very, what's really good about what he does in the performance is that he could have gone down the route which I think a lesser actor might have tried to do. I wouldn't have allowed him, of course, as the director, but he could have tried to go down the route of being like really different in every version of himself. But he didn't. You could still see it was essentially the same person with just subtle shifts either way, and you suddenly realize, oh right, he's shifting his ground to suit the person he's talking to. And I think that's very true about men. I think men do that all the time. I think they try their best to be the thing that a woman wants them to be. Other men, of course, just ignore that entirely. But there are lots of men who are very attentive to that. And I think that, sorry, I'm going on too long, am I? But I want to say it's very interesting, this whole concept of the new. One of the things I want to do in the film is to poke fun at this idea of the new man. The new man who's so caring and minds the baby and does all this. And I often think rather cynically that in many ways the new man is just a clever cover-up for the old man in disguise. And that they've learned that, if we come on all soft and interesting and caring, then we get in the sack with the girl. You know what I mean? So the ultimate aim is still the same, but they've just decided there's a different way to kill a cat. You know.
I couldn't agree with you more. Is Stuart Townsend well known in Great Britain and Ireland?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. He would be what I think in America they often call an industry name. I mean, he's now well known because we've just released Adam, and so he's been all over the place, and he's been getting great reviews. But he's an industry name, so he wouldn't be a household name like Brad Pitt. He might be more like, I don't want to insult anybody, but I don't know who, what American actor would be like maybe Tobey Maguire or
Yes.
Seymour Hoffman or something.
Yes.
Somebody who is really highly regarded in the industry but mightn't yet have sufficient popularity to put their name over the marquee, as they say. That's the difference. It'll be interesting to see. He's now gone on to do, he's playing Lestat, the character that Tom Cruise played in the not the remake, the sequel to Interview with the Vampire. So I'll be very interested to see what he does with that.
I would bet money that he'll be wonderful.
Yeah, well, it's a logical enough move on, isn't it, from Adam? I mean, even in the film we have those references to Dracula and that in the Laura section. So it's a fairly logical step to move on to playing an actual vampire instead of just this rather strange man.
Is Kate Hudson the only American actor in the film?
Oh yes, that's right. And it's what's interesting is that I met Kate, and I met her amongst a group of about a dozen actresses that I agreed to meet, if you like, because Miramax were very anxious that there be some one in the film that the American audience would have some connection to. They weren't looking for major stars, and neither were they, to be fair to them, imposing a specific person on me. They weren't saying, we want you to cast so and so. Really, what they were saying was, we'd like you to look at some of these American actresses and see. And they're all young, up and coming actresses. Little did I know when I met Kate, because it's over 2 years ago now, that by the time the film gets released, she would probably be one of the best known names in Hollywood at the moment. Just out of the blue. When I met her, she had only just done a film called 200 Cigarettes. Certainly I had never heard of her, I'd never seen her. I just thought she was gorgeous, and she was so funny. Was the like all these young girls were coming in to me, and I was meeting them and talking to them, and there were very good actresses amongst them. There were very good things, but Kate had that little spark of humour that I thought, this is what this role needs. It needs that kind of. In Ireland, we use a word to be brazen. I don't know whether it has the same meaning in America when we use it, but to be brazen is actually a very nice way of saying that somebody is right out there. You know what I mean? They don't care what people think, and Kate reminded me of that. And secondly, and maybe just as important in some ways, she had a gorgeous singing voice. And the character in the film sings, so it seemed to me that because I was prepared obviously to dub the voice in if necessary, but as soon as I heard Kate, Kate said to me, "Oh, I can sing, by the way," and I said, "Yeah." All actresses, I can sing, I can ride horses, I can do anything, I can drive a car, I can leap out of an airplane if you want me to, but actually she really has that lovely kind of jazzy voice. And it's very unusual in someone that young. In fact, she's probably the only one I met who had that kind of quality of voice, which was just right for the character in the film. So I decided, well, yes, why not? Why not cast an American in the role?
It was a wonderful choice. Did you know at the time that she was the daughter of Goldie Hawn?
Yes. That was, in fact, probably the only thing I knew about her was that she was the daughter of Goldie Hawn. And it was very interesting, because you have this experience when somebody comes into the room and the first thing I think, all right, she's blonde, but she doesn't actually look a great deal like Goldie, I mean, I wouldn't have immediately thought, oh, she must be related to Goldie Hawn. But then as she starts to talk to you, and she gestures, and she smiles, and she looks around her, and she says things a certain way, and it's extraordinary how then you begin to make the comparison. She has so many of those kind of little looks about her, you know, that are clearly linked to her mother. And I think what's also very nice as well is that she doesn't have any hang-ups one way or the other about it. You know, there were some people would get very defensive about it and want to say, I'm my own person, I'm not my mother, all that sort of stuff. And I think, and it's probably a tribute to their upbringing, you know, and to the ease of their family life, if that is the case, that she just, you know, she just says, yes, that's who my mum is, and I love my mum, and you know, she has nice things to say about her, and she's quite happy to talk about her. And as I say, she doesn't feel in some way she has to prove to everybody that she's her own person. And I think that's right. She'll be her own person willy-nilly, you know.
Okay, could we, I won't ask you what your vices are.
Okay.
You gotta have some. Okay, all right,
Yeah,
are we
they're
rolling
mine.
again? And you're just staying on a shot of him now. Okay, that's good. All right. Gerrad, this is not your first film, but does this film represent any particular milestone in your film career?
Oh, well, yes, I mean, in a number of ways. It's the first one to be released in America, and probably indeed to be released worldwide. My last film got a pretty good run around Europe and in Australia.
And that was?
That was Guilt Trip. But apart from a few film festivals here in America, it never got released in America. I think in general distributors thought it was both too dark, and again it didn't have any well-known faces in it, and so the combination of those two things, people just they couldn't hear the cash registers ringing. However, you know, everything has its place because of that. Miramax, some people at Miramax saw that film, and they did consider it for a while, but even though they didn't release it, it did make them interested in the work I was doing, and so they were sort of keeping an eye on what I was writing. And as soon as they saw the script for Adam, you know, they wanted to buy it straight away. So that you know, that was that you can see the kind of path by which, if I hadn't made Guilt Trip, probably this one would never have happened. So that's the way it goes. So it is a milestone that way. It's also, for me, a kind of, I mean, people will read this film differently and see different things in it. And, you know, at one level, it is just a fluffy little comedy. And I'm perfectly happy for people to see it that way. It does, for me, though, have a rather more serious purpose in relation to the way in which film comedy has been made. That I have a feeling, it's a bit of a hobby horse of mine, I have a feeling that we had begun over the last 10 or 15 years to just make this stream of romantic comedies, which, you know, when you put them all together, seem to all have the same story, and they all have the same pattern, and you go in and you sit down and watch them, and 5 minutes into them, you know exactly the way they're going to turn out, and it had begun to feel like it couldn't be funny unless it followed this formula, unless it followed this pattern. So I very much wanted to do something that was a bit more morally dangerous, a bit more kind of sexually adventurous, and to show that you could do this kind of film, and it didn't have to be a deadly serious tragic film. It could still be funny, and it could still be, because I really believe that the kind of adventure of relationships is a very amusing and interesting thing, and that even though, you know, people go through awful times, you know, trying to start up relationships, and when the relationships end, or even in the middle of the relationships, it's always trauma and suffering and all the rest of it. It's also a very, very funny part of human interaction. So I very deliberately wanted to kind of get away from those really sweetie pie romantic comedies which had begun to dominate the film scene, and so I'm very glad that you know, Miramax were happy to accommodate that and weren't looking for me to give a nice soft ending to the film, or to wrap it up all neatly and say, actually, everybody's lovely, really, it's grand. You know, I wanted to still have that slightly, I mean, I'm not suggesting for a moment, this isn't, you know, this isn't a sort of a milestone in cinema history or anything, but in my own way, just personally, I would like to think that people will look at this and say, oh yeah, you can make comedies about something that's a bit more complex and a bit more adult than a lot of the romantic comedies have been.
That was my take on it precisely.
Good.
In that Yes, young people are going to identify with it. I'm talking about the teen, the
Yes.
13 to 20
Yeah.
year olds. But at the same time, the 20 and beyond can certainly find plenty to enjoy about it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And in fact, actually, even in some of the screen, I'm sure I shouldn't be saying this. I'm sure it's secret knowledge, but in some of the screenings we got for it, in general, we found that the sort of 21 to 30-year-olds rated it more highly than the teenagers, because I think they understood better the kind of the complex moral issues that were being played around with in it, whereas in some ways teenagers might prefer life to have more simple messages to it. But I was very pleased when I found, even though probably more teenagers go to the cinema than the slightly older group, but I was really pleased to find that people over 21 were interested in that, and especially I think college crowds, all that. I think they'll have a lot of fun with it.
Do you have your next project already written?
No, I'm about to start writing again, and really I've a few different things. In fact, I've sort of agreed with Miramax that we'll try together to make another film. Because in many ways I think it's very fair that I was completely unknown in America until now. I'm still virtually unknown, but at least the film will become known. And it was Miramax who gave me that opportunity to do that. So very often, it happens in Hollywood that some company brings a particular talent to the attention of the American public, and then somebody else steps in and robs them and reaps the benefit of that. And so does the creative person itself. So I sort of thought it was only fair, really, to see could myself and Miramax put together another film, given that we'd worked reasonably successfully on this one. So it over the next few months, hopefully we'll decide on a project which will be mutually interesting. So I don't quite know what it is yet. I just have to hope that the one I'm most interested in will be the one they'll be most interested in.
Would you be happy to direct someone else's script?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, because I've been sent scripts. I mean, over the last few years, I've been sent lots and lots of scripts. And even though in theory I tell myself, yes, I'd be happy to do that, when I actually sit down to read the scripts, sometimes there are scripts that I like, but each time I think to myself, God, this is at least a year out of my life to make this, and it's also a year in which I might write something myself that I'd be far more interested in, and so each time I end up passing on it. But probably what I'd say is, if I got some fantastic, if somebody sent me The Ice Storm or Fargo or American Beauty, I suspect I would be saying yes to directing it, But I don't think I've had scripts of that quality passed on to me yet, and that's the difference. And I suppose I'm not exactly a young filmmaker even as it is. I sort of feel I've only so many more films left in me, so maybe I should make them as close to the films I want them to be as anything. I certainly have no interest in becoming what's it they call it? A what director? A director for hire. Oh no, the auteur director. I mean that doesn't, that title doesn't impress me so much either. But certainly, I think writing and directing is the most creatively satisfying thing to do, and it certainly means you might have fights with the producers, but you don't have them with the writers, so that's a good thing.
Well, now I look at you and you're a pup, really, because I'm thinking of John Huston, who directed up into his 80s.
Well, I wish. I hope so.
His 80s.
Absolutely. I mean that is the great. In some ways, being a director is like being a judge. When other people are hanging their hooks and settling down, judges and film directors are just getting into their stride. So it certainly would be lovely if I could keep my brain together long enough to continue. And also, actually, my own kind of personal hero, who is still alive even though he has stopped, but he was making films into his 70s, Billy Wilder. He just had a fantastic run as a director. So you're right, it is possible. But there's so many of them now are, what are they, 12, 13? You must meet these directors. Do you wonder, do I ask them questions or do I give them a lollipop? So it's kind of depressing, and the same thing is happening in Ireland. There's a herd of young directors coming up behind me, and would be quite happy to kick me out at the side of the road on their way. So yeah, you're right. I'm at that kind of in between age. I
Yes,
don't know.
that awkward teenage.
That awkward. That's right. Yeah.
I have to ask you one thing. Your last name is Stembridge.
Yes.
That doesn't sound like an Irish name.
No, it's not, and it's probably I don't know how far back to go to find out its true origin, but it's my grandfather was English, so he was actually one of the. He would have come to Ireland at a time when Ireland was still ruled by the horrible British, and he settled down there and he married an Irish Catholic girl, and he became a Catholic actually. So we end up being a Catholic family, even though his family. And Stembridge, the one thing I do know about it, curiously enough, and I've never visited it, is that it's a little village in Somerset in the south of England. There's a little village called a little village called Stembridge, and that may well be the sort of medieval origin of the name. So I'd love to visit at some point.
I had it figured to be an English name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It was English.
Yeah. Okay, Gerrad, I really have enjoyed this. We could spend the rest of the afternoon, ordering some popcorn or something.
Absolutely, it will be my pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
Since you turned down the Guinness that I wanted to get for you. Thank you so much for coming to Dallas.
Not at all. I'm delighted. Thank you very much.
Okay. Now he's going to turn the camera
Do a couple
around.
of cutaways and things.
Yes,
is it?
cutaways.
All right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I interviewed John Huston one time out off when we've got enough. Okay. The actor who plays Adam, Stuart Townsend, what's his background?
Stuart was born in Dublin. Funny enough, he's quite an exotic background. He also has an English father, and his mother was a very beautiful model who died tragically at the age of 43 from cancer. Stuart was about 20 at the time, I'd say, so I can imagine it had quite an effect on him, you know what I mean? And he was in acting school at the time. So I think probably I would suspect if I was to get all kind of psychological about it, it's made him a bit of a loner. You know what I mean? It's made him a bit somebody who always has this thing in the background. But at the same time, he never brings it up. He never talks about it. He doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve in that way or anything like that. But it must have been a bit of a shock.
You know he used that.
Oh, absolutely.
He absolutely used
Yes,
that
absolutely.
as a point of reference.
Yeah, that's right. Because there is something of the orphan about Adam. You know, there is something about the person who either has no parents or never had, or they're you know, I always felt I never wanted to decide myself what it should be, but he clearly needs something. He needs to sort of be liked or be wanted or be needed by people, be attractive to them.
Kate Hudson is your only American actor in this film. How did that come about?
Yeah. The other thing was Kate did the most appalling Irish accent when she came in to be interviewed, and some of the other actresses, to be fair to them, had made a fair old stab at it and had done research. And one of the things I noticed actually about actors American actors, when they do an Irish accent, they do one of two things. They either do a Northern Irish accent, because of course they've seen lots of movies with IRA gunmen and things like that, and they have an ear for that accent, or they do this kind of thing that comes from the Quiet Man somewhere. You know, that old Irish kind of rural Colleen accent, which really doesn't exist anymore, and certainly not in the form they do it. And Kate's was closer to that, I think, when I first met her. It was a real attempt at an Irish Colleen, but she worked really hard to get it right in the end, and she did. I mean, I think what she got was a really good version of that, what we call a Temple Bar accent. It's that part of Dublin, that sort of middle class, a little bit more refined, but also with actually even a little hint of American about it, you see, and that's the accent is so accurate that I feel sometimes Americans watching it may not be quite sure she's got it right, because they may be saying, she sounds, because in fact Stuart Townsend has an accent like that. And I remember one of the screenings, people said to me, or people asked the question afterwards, is is that guy Stuart Townsend Irish? Because he didn't sound too Irish to me, you know. And it's a
This is not your first film, but does this film have any particular meaning to you?
none whatsoever.
You can't do this because your head
I
won't
know,
match. Okay, let's try
I
it
hope.
again.
I hope.
No, let me try it again.
Okay.
Okay.
So, oh, it's an over the shoulder, is it? So my
Yes,
head is
yeah,
too
it's a
short.
two-shot.
Okay, yeah.
They're two shots all the way.
Am I doing okay so far?
Yes, you've been doing fine.
Okay,
I just,
okay.
when you did the no,
Yes,
I
yes,
knew
yes.
that wouldn't cut. Okay, I'll try that again.
Clever boots.
This is not your first film, but does this film mark a particular milestone in your film career?
Yes, I'll make money from it. That's the milestone. No,
That's enough.
that's plenty.
That'll,
That's all you
that'll do
need,
it.
yeah,
Okay.
just need to-
All right. Okay. Let me see. Okay. Is this film in any sense at all autobiographical?
No, it's not. Yeah, if it is autobiographical, it relates more to bits and pieces of me in the
That's
women.
good. All right. Okay. When you talked with Kate Hudson the first time, did you know that she was the daughter of Goldie Hawn?
Yes, it was probably the only thing I knew about her was that she was the daughter of Goldie Hawn. Mind you, that didn't influence me one way or the other. I mean, I neither thought, ha, is she now? Let's see what she's like then. Or nor did I think, oh, isn't that a fantastic idea to have Goldie Hawn's daughter in the film? But it certainly is. I think it'll go with her to her grave. Goldie is just too powerful an icon to be ignored, and I think no matter how famous Kate herself becomes, people will always talk about the fact that they are related. I mean, it may well be she'll say, "Do you know that Goldie Hawn is Kate Hudson's mother?" Maybe that will happen sometimes as well.
Yes. Yeah, that's what Debbie Reynolds says
Yes.
now. I'm Carrie Fisher's mother.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. That should do it. Fine.
Excellent.